one man forcing his stepson to eat cat waste to another who ended a 9-year-old's life by striking him over 50 times, these are California's most notorious prisoners awaiting capital punishment. Maria del Rocio, Rosi Alfaro, was born in 1971 in Anaheim, California. Her childhood was unstable and hard. When she was 13, she was using a lot of illegal substances. She took as many as 50 speedballs each day. At 14, she began trading her body for money. A year later, she was raising her first child on her own. By the time she was 18, she had 4 children and was expecting twins. And her behavior? It kept getting worse and worse. On June 15, 1990, 9-year-old Autumn Wallace was home alone in Anaheim. She was waiting for her mother and sister to come back from work. Rosi Alfaro was a friend of Autumn's older sister. She knew the family and thought the house was empty. She planned to take things and sell them for money to buy more substances. Autumn saw who it was and let her in when she asked to use the bathroom. After going inside, Rosi grabbed a sharp object from the kitchen and tricked Autumn into the bathroom. There, she targeted Autumn more than 50 times. After ending Autumn's life, she took items from the house and later sold them for $240. Her main reason for doing this was to get money to feed her habit. Later, she admitted she had been under the influence of illegal substances at the time, but there was no way to prove it. She wasn't arrested until much later. At first, she confessed during a recorded police interview, but soon after, her story changed. She claimed an unknown man had forced her into it. In other versions, she said 2 men drove her to the Wallace home, and that one of them made her end Autumn's life. Even with all the shifting stories, the scene told a different truth. Her fingerprints were found inside the house. A red-stained shoe print matched her as well. You might wonder why she kept changing her story. Maybe it was to dodge responsibility. Maybe it was to create doubt. But the physical evidence never lined up with her new versions. And the more she spoke, the less believable she became. She was charged with first-degree homicide with special circumstances, including burglary and theft. When it was time to decide her punishment, the jury first split. 10 voted for the ultimate penalty, 2 did not. Because they couldn't agree, it was declared a mistrial. A second jury later heard the case. This time, there was no split. They unanimously chose the harshest penalty. The judge agreed. He called the loss of Autumn's life one of the most senseless and brutal acts he had ever seen. In 2007, a U.S. district judge set aside her sentence. He pointed to long delays in California's system and called the outcome unfair. But later, the California Supreme Court stepped in and restored the original sentence. She was the first woman in Orange County to receive it. At the time she was sentenced, she was the 3rd woman in the state under such a penalty. As of April 2025, Rosi Alfaro is still held in California's highest security unit waiting on Roe. The next man was supposed to protect, but what unfolded inside that home revealed a much darker truth. Isauro Tony Aguer was born in 1980. He struggled in school, repeating 2 grades before leaving early. It suggested he may have faced learning challenges. For 3 years, he worked at the Woodland Park Retirement Hotel, caring for and driving elderly residents. His former boss remembered him as calm, patient, and kind toward those in his care. In October 2012, Aguer found new work as a security guard with AVL Private Security in Palmdale, California. Around this time, he met Pearl Fernandez. Pearl was the mother of Gabriel Fernandez, an 8-year-old boy. Within a year and a half, Aguirre moved into Pearl's home, and together they took over Gabriel's care. In 2013, the case of Gabriel, an 8-year-old boy, drew widespread shock across Los Angeles County. Gabriel had been sent to live with Pearl after time in the custody of other relatives. Over several months, while under Pearl and Aguirre's supervision, Gabriel faced extreme mistreatment. He was struck, shot with a BB gun, forced to eat cat waste, peppered with bruises, and locked inside a small cabinet, bound and gagged. On May 22, 2013, Gabriel was rushed to the hospital. He had suffered multiple injuries and was no longer responsive. Investigators later found that Aguer was the one who caused Gabriel's fatal injuries. Why did he do it? Prosecutors said Aguirre's actions sprang from his belief that Gabriel was homosexual. He used that belief to justify the harsh treatment. On May 23, 2013, police took Aguer and Fernandez into custody. At first, Aguer faced a charge of attempted homicide. During the trial, the court reviewed extensive proof of Gabriel's mistreatment. The jury found Aguer guilty of first-degree homicide and the special circumstance of harsh treatment. On December 13, 2017, they recommended capital punishment, and a judge accepted that recommendation. In 2018, Aguer was moved to San Quentin State Prison to wait for his final sentence. But in 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom put a hold on capital punishment in California, and no date was ever set. In 2021, Aguer was transferred to the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. As of today, his sentence remains in place but has not been carried out. Next, a hidden cabin, haunting recordings, and a trail of devastation left behind. Charles Ng was born in 1960 in Hong Kong as the youngest of 3 siblings in a well-off family. His father's strict rules and lack of warmth left Charles feeling ignored and resentful. In his teens, he was kicked out of several schools for theft and acting out. At 18, he moved to the United States on a student visa to study biology, but left after 1 semester. He then joined the U.S. Marine Corps, where he was caught taking weapons from a military base. Faced with a military trial, he escaped custody in 1980 and fled to Northern California. That's where he met Leonard Lake. Lake was a survivalist with extreme beliefs. He and Charles teamed up in the mid-1980s. Together, they lured people to a hidden cabin in Calaveras County, California. Inside that isolated spot, they used brutal personal tactics against men, women, and even children. They ended the lives of at least 11 people and filmed what they did. When police finally searched the cabin, they found human bones, tools stained with body fluids, and a 250-page diary Lake had kept. The diary laid out each step in chilling detail. In 1985, Lake was caught shoplifting. Not long after being taken into custody, he took his own life. Charles managed to slip away to Canada. There, he was arrested again for shoplifting and for getting into a fight with a store guard. Canadian courts debated for years over sending him back. In 1991, he was finally returned to U.S. authorities. His trial did not begin until 1998, 7 years after his return. In court, Charles caused delays by firing several lawyers and trying to defend himself. In 1999, a jury found him guilty of planning and taking the lives of 11 people. The judge imposed capital punishment. In 2022, the California Supreme Court agreed to keep that penalty in place. Today, he is still held at the California Medical Facility. California has put a hold on carrying out that final punishment, so no date has been set. A missing pregnant wife, a husband under fire. This case will leave you haunted. Scott Peterson was born in 1972 in San Diego, California. On the surface, his life seemed steady and full of promise. He was the only child of Lee and Jackie Peterson, though both parents had children from earlier marriages. Scott grew up in a stable home and quickly found a passion for golf. In high school, he even shared the course with a rising star, future pro Phil Mickelson. After graduation, he earned a partial scholarship to Arizona State University. But before long, Scott transferred to California Polytechnic State University, where he quietly shifted his future plans. He graduated with a degree in agricultural business. In 1997, Scott married Lassie Rocha. They had met while he was working at a restaurant in Morro Bay. After the wedding, the couple settled in Modesto, California. By 2002, Lassie was 8 months pregnant with their first child, a boy they planned to name Connor. On December 24, 2002, Lassie disappeared from their home in Modesto. Scott told police he had gone fishing that morning at the Berkeley Marina. As hours turned into days, the story captured national attention. Crowds waited anxiously for any sign of Lacey or the baby. As police looked closer, Scott's behavior began raising serious questions. Investigators uncovered that he had been seeing another woman, Amber Frey, a massage therapist from Fresno. Scott had told her he was a widower. When the truth came out, that he was still married, the case took a darker, more complicated turn. In April 2003, remains found along the San Francisco Bay shoreline were identified as Lacey and her unborn son. Scott was arrested soon after. At the time, his hair color was different, and he had several cell phones and a large sum of cash. Officials thought he might have been planning to leave the state. His trial opened in early 2004. There was strong circumstantial evidence against Scott Peterson, but no direct physical evidence ever linked him to Lacey's disappearance or passing. Investigators built the case mostly on his behavior, inconsistencies in his story, the secret affair with Amber Frey, and his strange actions after Lacey went missing, like selling her car and researching boat launches. So, on November 12, 2004, the jury found Scott guilty for taking both Lacey's life and their unborn child's life. In 2005, the court imposed capital punishment. Scott was sent to San Quentin State Prison. In 2020, the California Supreme Court threw out that punishment because of errors in how the jury was picked. A year later, he was resentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison without any chance of release. In 2022, he was moved to Mule Creek State Prison. Scott has always said he did nothing wrong. In 2024, the Los Angeles Innocence Project agreed to review his case, pointing to new witness accounts and lab tests that might clear him. A judge approved DNA checks on a piece of tape found on Lacey's clothing. As of April 2025, Scott Peterson remains behind bars. The next man whose long history of unspeakable acts against children gave him a name that still chills to this day. Richard Allen Davis was born in 1954 in San Francisco. He was the third of 5 children. Both of his parents struggled with heavy drinking. They often punished him harshly and fought in front of him. When he was 9 years old, his parents split up. He went to live with his father, a dock worker who had sudden mood swings and treated Richard roughly. This difficult home life led Richard to troubling behavior. His record of offenses began in his early teens. At 12, he was put on probation after breaking into buildings and forging documents. By 15, he had done this several times and left high school. At 17, he faced a choice: stay in a youth detention center or enlist in the Army. He chose the Army but left after 13 months with a general discharge. Over the next few years, Davis's behavior escalated. In 1973, while attending a party, an 18-year-old woman lost her life to a gunshot wound. Authorities ruled it a self-inflicted injury, though Davis later admitted the event stayed with him for years. Just 1 year later, in 1974, Davis was caught unlawfully entering another building. He was sentenced to serve between 6 months and 15 years in prison, but was released on parole after only 1 year behind bars. His harmful acts continued into the 1990s. In 1993, he forced 12-year-old Polly Klaas from her home during a sleepover. He tied up her friends and covered their mouths, then forced Polly out. He kept her hidden overnight. During that time, he made an unwanted, intimate advance and squeezed her neck until she lost her life. He left her where she fell in a nearby park. At his trial, the court found him guilty. The state pointed to his long list of offenses and how severe this act was. In August 1996, the jury gave him capital punishment. During his sentencing, Richard Allen Davis made an obscene gesture toward the courtroom camera. He then claimed that Polly Klaas had said, "Just don't do me like my dad," implying misconduct by her father. This allegation was unfounded, with no evidence supporting it. Polly's father, Mark Klaas, was so overwhelmed with emotion that he tried to approach Davis but was restrained by security officers before he could reach him. His behavior in prison has also been troubling. In 2006, he was found unconscious in his cell after taking too many painkillers. He survived that. Doctors diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder and schizoid personality disorder. These diagnoses reflect his long history of harming others. As of January 2024, Davis is still held in a section of San Quentin State Prison where inmates wait for the state to carry out the punishment ending their life. California has a hold on this form of punishment, so no date has been set. In May 2024, a judge denied his request to change that ruling because of procedural errors. The next individual said, "I do," but what she really wanted was something else. Angelina Rodriguez was born in May 1968 in Rockaway, Queens, New York. She later moved to Montebello, California. Over the years, she had several relationships. In April 2000, she married Jose Francisco Frank Rodriguez, a special education teacher. Shortly after, she arranged a $250,000 life insurance plan on Frank. Not long after their wedding, Frank began having strange health problems. Angelina tried more than once to cause his passing. First, she slipped poison made from oleander into his tea. When that did not work, she loosened the gas cap on their dryer, another attempt that failed. Finally, she poured antifreeze into his sports drink. Frank passed away on September 9, 2000. At first, doctors could not explain what happened. Later, tests showed toxins in his body and that foul play was involved. Investigators concluded that Angelina stood to gain the insurance money. Her past then came under closer look. Back in 1993, her 13-month-old daughter, Alicia, had passed away after choking on a pacifier. At that time, Angelina had taken out a $50,000 policy on Alicia without her husband knowing and named herself as the only beneficiary. A lawsuit over the pacifier brought a $710,000 settlement. During Angelina's trial, the prosecution highlighted both the insurance claim on Frank and the earlier policy on Alicia. They argued this showed a clear pattern of acting for money. Angelina insisted she was innocent. She said Frank ended his own life and denied any role in her daughter's passing. In October 2003, a jury found Angelina guilty of first-degree homicide under special rules for ending a life for financial benefit and using poison. In January 2004, she received the harshest penalty available at that time. The judge said he had never seen a colder heart in his 20 years on the bench. Angelina appealed, but in 2014, the California Supreme Court upheld her penalty. A new hearing in 2024 changed her outcome. Her sentence was reduced to life in prison with no chance of release. The local prosecutor chose not to push for the harshest penalty again, noting that Angelina's original defense lawyer had not provided effective help during the penalty phase. But what happens when a respected educator hides a dark double life? Vincent Brothers was born in 1962 in Bellport, New York. He worked as a vice principal at John C. Fremont Elementary School in Bakersfield, California. He earned a bachelor's degree from Norfolk State University and then a master's from California State University, Bakersfield. His job looked solid, but his home life was troubled. He went through several marriages and had a history of hurting his spouse. In 1988, he pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor for causing harm to his wife. He spent 6 days in jail and was on probation. His second marriage ended in divorce in 2001 because he was unfaithful. They remarried in January 2003. On July 6, 2003, after returning from church, Joni Harper, her mother Ernestine, 70, and Joni's 3 children, Marquez, 4, Lindsay, 2, and Marshall, 6 weeks, were found in their Bakersfield home with bullet wounds. No valuables were taken, which pointed to someone who knew them personally. Medical exams showed the harm happened after 1 p.m. that Sunday. Brothers had told investigators he flew to Columbus, Ohio, to visit his brother Melvin, but police learned he actually rented a car and drove about 2,000 miles to Bakersfield, carried out the shootings, and then drove back to Ohio. Specialists who studied insects on the car found species only seen in the western U.S., which didn't match his story. The car's odometer also confirmed the long drive. In May 2007, Brothers went on trial. After 137 people spoke, a jury found him guilty on 5 first-degree counts for ending 5 lives, with special notes because there were multiple victims. Prosecutors said his failing marriages and affairs gave him a reason. On September 27, 2007, he received the harshest penalty available. He has been held at San Quentin State Prison ever since. The next man's DNA revealed a horrifying pattern along a California highway. Born in 1961 in Los Angeles, Ivan Jerome Hill was the second of 5 children. When he was 7, his father wounded his mother with a .22 rifle. She survived but suffered serious injuries. His father went to prison, and his mother later divorced him. With both parents gone, Hill took on the job of caring for his younger brothers and sisters. He grew up in Pomona, California, and went to Pomona High School. He did well in sports and showed leadership. He became captain of the football team. By 1978, though, things changed. Hill became hooked on substances and started taking part in illegal activities like theft. His first run-in with the law came in 1979, at age 17. He joined a group that carried out a theft in Glendora, California. During that event, his partner, Vincent Myers, fatally wounded a store clerk. Myers received a life term. Because Hill was underage and cooperated with investigators, he got a shorter sentence. After his release, Hill slipped back into trouble. He took part in more thefts and returned to prison. In 1993, he was caught again and given a 10-year term. Between 1986 and 1994, Hill's behavior turned far more aggressive. He was linked to at least 9 incidents where women in their 30s were asphyxiated and their bodies left along California State Route 60. This pattern led people to call him the 60 Freeway Strangler. No one knows for sure why he did it, though his rough childhood, substance use problems, and possible mental health issues likely played a role. Years passed without answers. Then, in 2003, while Hill was serving time for theft, DNA testing tied him to those earlier incidents. Police arrested him and charged him with 6 counts of causing loss of life between 1993 and 1994. At his trial, his lawyer spoke about his troubled youth, but the jury still found him guilty. On January 2, 2007, Hill received the highest possible sentence. California has not carried out such sentences since a 2006 pause on capital punishments. Today, Ivan Hill is held at the California Health Care Facility in Stockton. He remains under this sentence as the state continues to pause all capital punishments. But when anger, addiction, and despair collide, the outcome can be unthinkable. But can a parent's love survive the grip of addiction? In the next case, the answer is devastating. Ramon Salceo was born in March 1961 in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, Mexico. On April 14, 1989, Ramon Salceo moved through California's wine country, leaving a trail of devastation in just 3 hours. He was under the influence of illegal substances at the time. His rampage began at home, where he ended the lives of his wife, Angela Salceo, and 2 of their daughters, Sophia, just 4 years old, and Teresa, only 22 months. A third daughter, Carmina, just 3 years old, was badly hurt but miraculously survived, found alive next to her sisters. Salceo didn't stop there. In Cotati, he targeted his mother-in-law, Marian Richards, along with her 2 young daughters, Ruth and Mariah. Ruth was only 12, Maria was just 8. Then he drove to the Grand Cru winery in Kenwood, where he ended the life of a co-worker, Tracy Tuvey. Later, Salceo claimed he believed his wife was involved with Tuvey, but investigators found no proof of that. Instead, they uncovered a history of problems that painted a different picture: heavy white snow use, serious money troubles, and a lawsuit over unpaid child support from a previous relationship. Because the case drew intense media attention, the court moved the trial out of Sonoma County. On October 30, 1990, a jury found him responsible. On November 16, 1990, the judge imposed the harshest sentence available. Salceo showed no emotion when the sentence was announced, though one juror was seen crying. He remains at San Quentin State Prison in the unit for inmates with the most severe sentences. His daughter Carmina later wrote a book titled Not Lost Forever: My Story of Survival, in which she describes how she healed from that day's events. On August 31, 1984, Cox and 2 other gang members went to the home of Deborah Alexander by mistake. They had meant to go 2 doors down. When they opened fire, 4 members of that household lost their lives: Abora Alexander, age 59, her daughter Deetra Alexander, age 25, and her grandsons Damon Bonner, age 6, and Damani Garner Alexander, age 12. 2 other family members got away and called the police right away. Cox and Horace Edwin Burns were arrested soon after. Authorities said Cox was one of the shooters and Burns stayed outside as a lookout. Later, Darren Charles Williams was identified as the second shooter. People still debate what led to that shooting. Some reports say the real target was a woman involved in a lawsuit against a local club. According to those accounts, Cox and Burns agreed to carry out the job for $60,000. Cox's defense team said he took part because older gang members pressured him. In 1986, a jury found Cox guilty of 4 counts of intentional unaliving with special circumstances. Because there was more than 1 life taken, they recommended the harshest penalty. The judge agreed. In 1991, the California Supreme Court confirmed that decision. Cox was sent to San Quentin State Prison. He stayed aggressive there. In 1988, he targeted a fellow inmate, Stanley "Tookie" Williams, who had helped start the Crips, with a sharp object. In 2000, Cox and 2 other inmates tried to break out by cutting through a fence. They hoped to take hostages and grab weapons. Guards stopped them before they got out. The escape attempt prompted officials to address security problems plaguing San Quentin for years. Cox's actions and the tragic events of 1984 deeply affected the community. Kermit Alexander, a former NFL player and relative of the victims, became an advocate for justice reform. He co-authored a book detailing the impact of the event on his family and the broader implications for society. Today, Cox is still at San Quentin in the unit for inmates with the harshest sentences. He does not have a set date for any final review of his case. California has not carried out its toughest penalty since 2006 because of legal challenges and a statewide pause. Some people argue that inmates like him deserve a second look. Kevin Cooper was born as Richard Goodman on January 8, 1958. He entered the world in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When he was 2 months old, he went into an orphanage. At 6 months, Melvin and Esther Cooper adopted him and renamed him Kevin. His childhood was hard. He suffered physical harm at home. He ran away more than once. As a teenager, he spent time in youth detention. On June 4, 1983, something terrible happened in Chino Hills, California. In the Ryan family home, a person used a sharp object to strike Doug and Peggy Ryan. Their daughter Jessica, who was 10, and their neighbor Christopher, who was 11, also suffered the same fate. Only Joshua Ryan, who was 8, survived even though he was badly hurt. 2 days before that, Kevin escaped from the California Institution for Men. He had been serving time there for burglary. Police found him hiding in a nearby house. They arrested him and began investigating what happened in the Ryan home. Near the scene, investigators found several pieces of evidence: a red-stained tan t-shirt, a hatchet sheath, and shoe prints that matched prison-issued footwear. Tests later confirmed Kevin's body fluids on the shirt, which was believed to have been worn by the person responsible. Cigarette butts recovered from the family's stolen car were also matched to Kevin. This physical evidence became central to the case. However, the defense argued that the investigation was flawed. They said authorities ignored leads pointing to 3 other men seen near the house that night. They also raised concerns about possible mishandling or tampering with evidence. The state maintained that Cooper acted alone. In 1985, Kevin went to court. The judge and jury heard DNA evidence and witness statements. Kevin said he did not do this. He claimed someone set him up. The jury decided he was responsible for the 4 stabbings that led to loss of life. They also held him responsible for the stabbing that Joshua survived. The court gave him the harshest punishment available by law. Over the years, Kevin's lawyers asked for new testing. They believed fresh DNA work might prove his innocence. In 2021, Governor Gavin Newsom asked for an independent review of the case. That team said the proof of Kevin's responsibility was extensive and conclusive. They agreed with the original outcome. As of April 2025, Kevin remains under that sentence at the California Health Care Facility in Stockton. He has been held there for more than 39 years. He is among the people who have spent the longest time under that penalty in California.